Trước khi tôi bắt đầu viết câu chuyện dài 4.000 từ tôi cần tạo một dàn ý mới cho chủ đề này. Câu chuyện sẽ được chia thành 5 phần, thay vì 8 phần như câu chuyện trước với nội dung phù hợp với tiêu đề và thumbnail đã cho. Để đảm bảo câu chuyện phù hợp và chất lượng tôi sẽ tạo dàn ý chi tiết cho 5 phần 2. Viết câu chuyện hoàn chỉnh dài 4.000 từ theo dàn ý 3. Tuân thủ mọi yêu cầu về định dạng và nội dung 4. Đảm bảo phong cách kể chuyện phù hợp với yêu cầu ban đầu. Đây là câu chuyện hoàn chỉnh theo yêu cầu. My name is Margaret, and I am 53 years old. After 30 years of marriage, I thought I knew everything about my husband James. We built a beautiful home, raised 2 children, and I believed we had a solid foundation of trust. Then came that Friday night when I overheard something that shattered my world. James was hosting his monthly poker game in the basement while I was upstairs cleaning up after dinner. His laughter floated up the stairs until I heard those devastating words. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from. Hit the like button if you have ever trusted someone who betrayed you, and subscribe to hear how I turned this heartbreak into the most empowering moment of my life. I met James when I was 25 and working as an accountant at a small manufacturing company in Ohio. He was 30, charming, with a boyish smile that made my heart flutter whenever he walked into the office. James worked in sales, always dressed in crisp suits, confident and quick, with a joke that would make everyone laugh. Our relationship began with casual conversations. By the coffee machine evolved into lunch dates, and before long we were seeing each other every weekend. James proposed after 11 months of dating. I remember how he knelt on one knee at the restaurant, where we had our first date, presenting a diamond ring that must have cost him several months of salary. Looking into his earnest brown eyes, I did not hesitate to say yes. We married 6 months later in a beautiful ceremony with 200 guests, and I truly believed I had found my forever partner. The early years of our marriage were happy. We bought our first house, a modest 3-bedroom, in a good school district, planning ahead for the family we both wanted. James continued climbing the corporate ladder, eventually becoming regional sales director. I scaled back my accounting career after our first child, Amanda, was born, taking on part-time consulting work that allowed me to be home more. Our son Kevin came 3 years later, completing our family. Life fell into a comfortable rhythm of school activities, summer vacations, to the beach holiday gatherings, with extended family, and the occasional date night when grandparents could babysit. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family, and for many years it felt that way on the inside, too. As the children grew older and more independent, James began traveling more frequently for work. Weekly overnight trips expanded to being gone 3 or 4 days at a time. He explained it was necessary for his career advancement, and I supported him, managing the household and children largely on my own. The frequent absences became our new normal, and I told myself this was simply the price of success. Around the time Amanda left for college, I noticed subtle changes in James. He became more protective of his phone, taking calls in another room or stepping outside. He bought new clothes, started working out at a gym, and seemed unusually concerned with his appearance for a man in his 50s. When I asked about these changes, he would say things like, "I am just trying to stay healthy," or "The competition at work is getting younger, got to keep up appearances." I trusted him. After 25 years of marriage, I never seriously considered that he might be unfaithful. We still had dinner together when he was home, attended community events as a couple, and maintained what I thought was a satisfactory, intimate life. Yes, the passion had cooled somewhat, but I believe that was natural after so many years together. Friends sometimes made comments about James flirting at parties or being overly attentive to female colleagues at company events. I dismissed these observations, confident in our bond and the life we had built together. I was the one who knew him best, who had stood by him through job changes, family crises, and health scares. We had weathered challenges together and emerged stronger, or so I thought. Then came the business trip to Chicago that was unexpectedly canceled at the last minute. James did not call to tell me he would be home. Perhaps he wanted to surprise me, or perhaps he simply forgot. Whatever the reason, he returned, to find me gone for the evening at my monthly book club meeting with friends. Rather than spending the night alone, he called his buddies and quickly organized an impromptu poker night in our finished basement. I returned home around 10:30, hearing male voices and laughter from downstairs. Not wanting to intrude on their game, I quietly entered through the front door and began tidying the kitchen. Then I heard the front door open again, and female voices joined the mix. The wives of some of James's friends had apparently decided to join after their own evening out. What happened next would change everything. It was the distinct sound of Diane's laughter that first caught my attention. She was married to Robert James's closest friend, and had always been somewhat loud and boisterous, especially after a few drinks. I could hear the women settling in the living room just off the kitchen where I was loading the dishwasher. "The guys will be playing for hours," I heard Diane say. "Let's open another bottle of wine and catch up." I was about to walk in and greet them when I heard my name mentioned. "Poor Margaret has no idea," said a voice I recognized as belonging to Sandra, wife of another poker regular. "I know, right? James has been playing her for a fool for years." Diane replied, her words slightly slurred. "I am honestly surprised she has not figured it out." I froze my hand, still holding a dinner plate mid-air. Everything in me wanted to walk away to not hear whatever might come next, but my feet remained rooted to the spot. "Do you think it is just Brenda, or are there others?" asked a third voice belonging to Tanya, whose husband had recently joined the poker group. "Oh, honey, Brenda is just the current one," Diane said with a bitter laugh. There was that receptionist before her, and the fitness instructor before that. James has quite the pattern. My heart pounded so loudly, I feared they might hear it from the next room. Brenda. The name immediately conjured the image of a young blonde who had joined James's department 2 years ago. I had met her at the company Christmas party, noticed how she laughed too hard at James's jokes, touched his arm too frequently during conversation. But James had dismissed my observations, calling me paranoid and overly suspicious. "You know what James said to Robert?" Diane continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that I had to strain to hear. "He said Margaret is too stupid to realize he has been cheating for years. Too caught up in her perfect little homemaker world to see what is happening right under her nose." The women erupted into drunken laughter, and the plate finally slipped from my fingers, clattering loudly in the sink. The laughter immediately stopped. "Is someone in there?" Sandra called out. I should have revealed myself, then confronted them about what I had heard. Instead, I quietly slipped out the back door into the yard, tears already streaming down my face. I needed to think to process this devastating information away from prying eyes and insincere apologies. Our backyard had a small gazebo where I often sat to read or enjoy morning coffee. I made my way there in the darkness, collapsing onto the bench as the full weight of what I had just learned crashed over me. 30 years of marriage, decades of trust and shared life, all built on a foundation of lies. The cool night air did nothing to soothe the burning humiliation I felt. Not only had James been unfaithful, but he had mocked me to his friends, painted me as a naive fool too blind to see the truth. And his friends, people who had dined in our home, whose children had played with ours, had kept his secrets all this time. Questions flooded my mind. How long exactly had this been happening? Were there signs I had missed or ignored? Had everyone been laughing behind my back for years? And most painfully, did James ever truly love me? Or was our entire marriage a convenience for him? A papal, respectable cover for his true nature? I sat there for nearly an hour, cycling through shock, grief, and anger. By the time the tears subsided, something had crystallized within me. A cold, clear resolve that would guide my actions in the coming days. James had underestimated me, believed me too stupid to discover his betrayal or too weak to respond decisively. He was about to learn how profoundly he had misjudged the woman he married. I quietly re-entered the house through the back door. The women had moved to the basement to join the poker game, their voices now mingling with the men's from downstairs. In the bedroom, I quickly packed an overnight bag with essentials, then wrote a brief note: "I know everything. Do not call me. I will contact you when I am ready." I placed the note on James's pillow, then called my sister Ellen, who lived an hour away. She answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Margaret, is everything okay?" "No," I said simply. "Can I stay with you for a few days? I will explain when I get there." To her credit, Ellen asked no further questions, just said, "Of course, I will wait up for you." As I drove away from the home I had shared with James for over 2 decades, I realized I felt something unexpected alongside the pain: relief. The burden of uncertainty and doubt I had been carrying perhaps for years without fully acknowledging it had been lifted. The truth, however painful, was now in the open. And truth, I reminded myself, could be wielded like a weapon by those skilled enough to use it. James had taught me an unwanted lesson about betrayal. Now it was my turn to teach him about consequences. When I arrived at Ellen's house shortly after midnight, her porch light was on and she was waiting at the door. One look at my face told her everything she needed to know. "That bastard," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "What did he do?" Over cups of tea at her kitchen table, I recounted what I had overheard. Ellen, 5 years my senior and divorced herself after catching her ex-husband in a similar situation, listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You need a good lawyer," she said firmly. "First thing tomorrow. My friend Patricia specializes in divorces where there has been infidelity. She will make sure you get everything you deserve." I nodded, grateful for her practical approach. "I need to be smart about this, Ellen. James thinks I am too stupid to realize what he has been doing. I want him to understand exactly how wrong he is." That night, as I lay awake in Ellen's guest room, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from James. I ignored them all, but reviewed our financial information on my laptop instead. As an accountant, I had always managed our household finances, but James handled his own business accounts and investments. Now I needed to understand exactly what assets we had and how they might be divided. By morning, James had left 17 messages each, more desperate than the last, evolving from confusion to concern, to anger, and back to pleading. I listened to each one, noting how he never actually admitted to anything specific, just repeatedly asked where I was and why I had left such a cryptic note. Ellen drove me to Patricia's law office at 9. The attorney was everything I needed in that moment: cool, professional, and utterly unsurprised by my story. "This happens more often than you would think," she said, reviewing the notes I had made about our finances. "The good news is that Ohio is an equitable distribution state, and with a long-term marriage like yours, the courts typically aim for an approximately equal division of marital assets. The fact that he has been unfaithful can sometimes influence the judge's determination of what is equitable in your favor." Patricia advised me to gather comprehensive documentation of all our assets before confronting James directly. "Knowledge is power in these situations," she explained, "and the element of surprise is your ally right now." Following her advice, I spent the next 2 days collecting bank statements, investment reports, property deeds, and insurance policies. I discovered accounts I had not known about, including an investment portfolio worth nearly $200,000 that James had apparently been managing separately for years. On the 3rd day of my absence, I returned briefly to the house while I knew James would be at work. I needed documents from our home office and wanted to collect more of my personal belongings. What I found there added another layer to James's betrayal. Hidden in a locked drawer of his desk, to which I found the key taped under the drawer itself, was a small box containing receipts for jewelry, hotel reservations, and weekend getaways that I had known nothing about. There were also several intimate photographs of James with a woman I recognized as Brenda, the coworker Diane had mentioned. They were dated over a span of 18 months. I photographed everything, then replaced it exactly as I had found it. The evidence would be useful not just legally, but for confronting the web of lies James had constructed when the time came. By the end of the week, James was frantic. He had called Ellen, repeatedly contacted our children to ask if they had heard from me, and even reached out to my few close friends. I maintained my silence, speaking only to Patricia, Ellen, and eventually to Amanda and Kevin, who deserved to know why their parents' marriage was imploding. Those conversations with my children were among the hardest I have ever had. Amanda, now 26, and engaged herself, wept openly. "How could Dad do this to you?" To us, Kevin, 23, and just starting his career, responded with quiet anger, refusing to take his father's calls after learning the truth. 10 days after I left home, I finally agreed to meet James at a neutral location, a coffee shop, halfway between our house and Ellen's. Patricia had advised me on what to say and what to keep to myself at this stage. "Let him talk," she had said. "People often reveal more than they intend to when they are nervous." James arrived 15 minutes early. I watched him from my car, noting how disheveled he looked. His normally immaculate appearance, now marked by wrinkled clothes and several days' growth of beard. He kept checking his watch and looking around anxiously. I entered precisely on time, maintaining my composure as his eyes found mine. For a moment, seeing the man I had loved for 3 decades, my resolve wavered. Then I remembered Diane's words, his casual cruelty in dismissing me as too stupid to discover his betrayal, and my determination returned in full force. "Margaret," he said, standing as I approached the table. "Thank God. I have been worried sick." I sat down without offering a hug or any physical contact. "I am sure you have been. What is going on? Where have you been? That note you left, what did you mean? You know everything." His questions came rapid fire, his expression a carefully constructed mask of confusion and concern. I took a sip of the water already on the table, making him wait. "Tell me about Brenda," I said finally. His face went pale, then flushed. "Brenda, my coworker. What about her? And the receptionist before her? And the fitness instructor before that?" I kept my voice steady, watching as realization dawned in his eyes. "Tell me, James, how many women have there been over the years? 5, 10 more, Margaret? I do not know what you have heard, but there has clearly been some misunderstanding." I placed my phone on the table between us, screen up, displaying one of the photos I had found in his desk. "Is this a misunderstanding too?" He stared at the image, then closed his eyes briefly. When he looked at me again, his expression had changed to one I recognized, from past arguments, a calculated blend of contrition and defensiveness. "It was a mistake," he said quietly. "A terrible lapse in judgment. It did not mean anything." "Which one? This specific affair with Brenda, or all the others you have hidden from me for years?" I could feel anger rising in my throat, but forced it down. This was not the time to lose control. "There were not that many," he protested weakly. "And they were just physical. They never meant anything. You and the kids, you are my real life, my family. How convenient for you to compartmentalize that way. To have your respectable wife at home, while you pursued whatever momentary pleasure caught your eye." I leaned forward slightly. "Did it make you feel powerful, James? To deceive me so thoroughly? To laugh about it with your friends?" His expression shifted to confusion. "What are you talking about? I overheard Diane that night when you thought I was at book club. You told Robert I was too stupid to realize you had been cheating for years. All your friends' wives knew. Everyone knew except me." For the first time, genuine shame crossed his face. "Margaret, I never said that. Diane was drunk. She was exaggerating, twisting things." "Stop lying," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "It is over, James. I have contacted a lawyer. I will be filing for divorce." The word landed between us with the weight of 3 decades. James reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled away before he could touch me. "Please," he said, his voice breaking. "We can work through this. Go to counseling. Start over. 30 years, Margaret. 30 years cannot end like this." "They already have," I replied, standing up. "You will be hearing from my attorney. Do not contact me directly again." As I walked out of the coffee shop, I could feel James's eyes on me, but I did not look back. The woman who had entered that cafe was not the same one who left it. I had faced my husband's betrayal head-on, and emerged stronger, clearer about what I deserved and what I would no longer tolerate. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be legal battles, emotional upheavals, and the challenging task of rebuilding my life as a single woman after 30 years of marriage. But as I drove away from that final conversation with James, I felt something that had been missing for longer than I cared to admit: freedom. The weeks that followed my confrontation with James transformed me in ways I could never have anticipated. With Patricia's expert guidance, I navigated the complex process of untangling 3 decades of shared life. We filed for divorce, citing infidelity, supported by the evidence I had gathered. James initially contested the terms, claiming that a few mistakes should not cost him half of everything we had built together. His tune changed quickly when Patricia presented the full extent of what we knew, including records of money he had spent on his affairs from our joint accounts, technically constituting marital waste. Faced with the prospect of a judge viewing these expenditures, James became significantly more cooperative. We sold our family home, dividing the proceeds equally. The investment accounts, retirement funds, and other assets were similarly split. In the end, the settlement was fair, leaving me with enough financial security to begin a new chapter. But the true victory was not monetary. Throughout the divorce process, I reconnected with parts of myself that had been dormant during my marriage. I reopened the small accounting firm I had put on hold when our children were young, discovering that my professional skills were still sharp and in demand. I moved into a charming townhouse closer to downtown, decorated exactly to my taste without compromising with anyone else's preferences. Ellen remained my rock, providing emotional support and practical advice drawn from her own divorce experience. The first year is the hardest, she told me. Then one day you will wake up and realize you have not thought about him for an entire day. That is when you know you are truly moving forward. My children processed their father's betrayal in different ways. Amanda maintained a distant but civil relationship with James, unwilling to completely cut ties but no longer viewing him with the same admiration. Kevin's anger ran deeper, and he refused to speak to his father for several months. Eventually, with the help of family therapy, they established new boundaries and expectations. I never discouraged their relationship with James. Despite everything, he was still their father. 6 months after I left our home, James appeared at my door unannounced one evening. I almost did not recognize him. He had lost weight, his clothes hanging loosely on his frame, dark circles shadowing his eyes. "Margaret, please," he said, his voice cracking. "I miss you. I miss our life. I made terrible mistakes, but I never stopped loving you." There was a time when those words would have weakened my resolve, when the familiar pull of our shared history might have convinced me to try again. That time had passed. "James," I said gently, but firmly, "what you miss is the comfort and stability I provided while you lived as you pleased. That is not love, that is convenience. And it is no longer available to you." "I have changed," he insisted. "Ended things with Brenda. Started therapy, realized what really matters." "Give me another chance to prove it." I shook my head. "I believe you may have changed. Pain has a way of forcing growth. But my decision is not about punishing you or waiting for you to become better. It is about valuing myself enough to walk away from someone who did not treasure what we had." Tears filled his eyes. "I never meant to hurt you. Yet you chose actions that could only result in my pain over and over again for years." I stepped back from the door. "I forgive you, James, not for your sake, but for mine. I wish you well in your new life as I am building mine. But that life no longer includes you as my husband." As I closed the door on James's tear-stained face, I felt no satisfaction or vindictive pleasure. Only peace and the quiet confidence that comes from making difficult choices that honor your own worth. In the year since that day, I have rebuilt my life piece by piece. My accounting practice is thriving, specializing in helping women understand and manage their finances, particularly through major life transitions like divorce. I have traveled to places James never wanted to visit, taken cooking classes and dancing lessons, joined a book club where we actually discuss the books, rather than just drinking wine and gossiping. I have even begun dating again, cautiously, and on my own terms. At 57, romance looks different than it did in my 20s, more thoughtful and less dramatic. I no longer need a partner to feel complete, which paradoxically makes me more open to genuine connection when it presents itself. The most unexpected gift of this painful journey has been discovering my own strength. The woman James dismissed as too stupid to uncover his deception has built a new life from the ashes of his betrayal. I sometimes wonder if he realizes the full extent of what he lost. Not just the devoted wife who kept his home and raised his children, but the partner who would have stood by him through anything had he only been worthy of that. Loyalty. What I know with absolute certainty is this: it is never too late to demand respect, to refuse to accept less than you deserve, to rebuild after devastation. Age and decades of history are not reasons to tolerate betrayal or disrespect. They are, if anything, reasons to expect better, to require more honesty and integrity from those who claim to love us. The story James told his friends about me, about the naive, oblivious wife too stupid to see the truth, was never accurate. But the woman I have become in the aftermath of his betrayal has exceeded even my own expectations. Strong, independent, unwilling to settle. This is who I always was beneath the roles of wife and mother, waiting for the chance to emerge. Have you ever discovered a betrayal that changed how you saw your entire relationship? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences. Share with someone who might need to hear that it is never too late to stand up for yourself and your worth. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something far better than you ever imagined.